Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our virtual levy presentation, community levy presentation. My name is Denny Waters. I'm the superintendent for Battleground Public Schools. And I just want to say that we appreciate all of you showing up here tonight and taking the time to get informed about our upcoming levy. So a little bit about this. This is a new format for us. Rather than me just being on a screen, we decided to actually do the presentation, so I'm up here standing. So first of all, if we have any technical difficulties, please just raise your hand and that'll alert us to something that's going on and we will fix it immediately. Secondly, what we're going to do is I'm going to actually go through the levy presentation and then we'll have a question and answer period where we will actually open up the chat and enable you to go ahead and submit your questions, and then we'll take the opportunity to answer those as best as we can. So with that, I'm just going to start, and I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about me. First of all, I want to say that it is truly an honor to be the superintendent of Battleground Public Schools. I am humbled and I am hopeful that as we move forward, we can do some really great things. As many of you know, my number one priority is to engage our stakeholders, and that includes our staff, that includes our students, but most importantly, that includes our community and our families that we serve. And so that is a high priority. We've implemented the "we are better together," and I truly believe that. So again, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here today. Next, I just want to tell you that Battleground is my home. I've lived in this community for over 30 years. My wife and I moved here just after we got married. It was our first home up in North County by Farter Lake. And both of my kids, Samantha and Chris, have gone through Battleground Public Schools. They've gone through Yakult Primary, Amboy Middle, and Battleground High School. And both of them are very successful. So I am very grateful for this community. I'm very grateful for Battleground Public Schools. And this is my opportunity to give back to this community. And what you should know about our school district is many of the employees that work for us are Battleground residents, and Battleground have grown up in this community. So that's a nice connection that we have that. And it's important for us as we move forward, because I think that connection allows us to understand the community and work, as I said before, certainly work better together. So with that, let's start our levy presentation. So first of all, I think one of the most important things to understand is what is a levy? Now, for us, we have a simple mnemonic device, and the mnemonic device is, well, levies are for learning and bonds are for building. And a levy is for learning. As you can see up here, levy dollars make up the difference, what the state provides for K-12 basic education and what it actually costs. And that's a critical point there, is that the state provides for a K-12 basic education. And I think all of us can agree that what we want is we want something that is more than basic. And that's where we get into what levy dollars do for us. I will tell you that there are 295 school districts in the state of Washington. 289 of them have levies. And that's not to say that, well, just because everybody's doing it, we should do it. But the school districts that don't have levies are very, very, very small. As I did some research around this, I found that the largest school district that doesn't have a levy currently has a total of 67 students enrolled in it. Most of the school districts that don't have levies, again, are very, very small. So their budgets are small and they can make up when in case they don't have a levy or they choose not to have a levy, it's easily made up. And that's not the case for us. Now, our levy, what does our levy do? A lot of people ask us that. Well, our levy definitely aligns with our mission. This is what we want Battleground Public Schools to be. This is what we want Battleground Public Schools to stand for. We want it to stand for high quality instruction. That is a priority for us. We believe that if we provide students with the highest quality of instruction, that they can be successful in their lives as they move forward. We want to support the social and emotional well-being of kids. In today's world, that is critical. Many of you will remember several years ago in Battleground School District, we had a series of suicides. We had 6 suicides, I believe, 6 or 7 suicides in the span of about a year and a half. And that was devastating for us in the school district, but also devastating for the entire community. And we made a commitment at that point. We went out and we secured a federal grant, the AWARE grant, which enabled us to provide social emotional services for kids from that point on. And I will tell you, and I'll knock on wood, that we have not had a suicide of a current student since that point. So that is critical for us, the social emotional well-being of kids. The other thing that we believe in is we believe that after-school activities and sports enhance the educational experience. I just had the opportunity yesterday to go over to Battleground High School and talk to the kids about the new esports that we've introduced. What a fantastic experience. And for these kids that are playing esports, this is a monumental, new and exciting thing that they've got in their lives now. It's fantastic. But it goes along with the other things that we offer for the kids. We know that for a lot of kids, sports is critical. We know that drama is critical for a lot of kids. Music is critical. Art is critical. And we believe in those. And it's important for us to provide our students with a well-rounded experience. Obviously, secure facilities where we keep students safe is important to us. Fiscal transparency and accountability, very, very important for us. And we'll talk a little bit about how we do that. Professional development, we want our staff to be highly trained, effective teachers. And the way that we do that is we provide them with quality professional development. And then obviously, and I talked about this a little, that's my priority. We need to be interactive and consistent with our communication that connects families to this and the community to Battleground Public Schools. And in order to do that, you need the resources to do that. Here's our current levy, just to give you an idea. And I want to point out here, this is critical, that our current levy does expire December 31st, 2021. So after December 31st, 2021, unless we pass a new levy, there will be no levy coming in. There will be no funds coming in. And in 2020-21, the district budget, the levy paid for $28.3 million in essential programs and services. It's about 14% of our budget. Now, what we should also talk about, though, is that this $28.3 million is actually enhanced because by having a levy, you also get what we term as LEA, levy equalization funds. And the LEA funds, the levy equalization allotment, is that comes in there, and that is critical. That's about, for us, an additional $3.5 million. So we're actually looking at the potential of $30 million that this current levy brings in and what future levies would possibly bring in. Again, it's critical that everybody understands that this is not a new tax. The levy is not a new tax. It is a replacement. It is a replacement tax so that we can continue to provide essential student programs. I would even say that, go to the next slide, that it's a tax cut. And the reason I say that is because this is where our current levy sits, $2.32. And you can see here that if we were to pass the new levy, what we are looking at is $1.99, $1.99 over the next 4 years. And this is an estimated tax rate. That's important. But here's the critical thing you have to understand is that if more houses are built, if more businesses move into Battleground, then the spread of the amount of money we're taxing is spread between more people. So actually, there's the likelihood that this $1.99 actually decreases over time, because this is the important piece here. We are looking to collect right now we're collecting $28.3 million. That's the max amount we can collect. Next year, we are asking to collect $26.8 million. As you can see here, this number is higher than this number. This number is lower. So we are actually looking to collect less money than we currently are. Even in the second year, it's still below the 28.3 million. It's 28.2. It doesn't go up above that 28.3 until the third year and the fourth year, where it enters 29.7 and 31.3. Again, the critical piece here, though, is that this is the total amount that we can collect. Again, if more houses come in, if more houses are built, more people move into the community, more businesses come in, then that this amount is spread out over more people, and the amount that is taxed for individuals ends up going down. What does it pay for? That's the critical piece. It is significant for our district. This is what it pays for. It pays for teachers, support, and administrative staffing. 260 positions right now are currently funded by the levy. That is a lot of people doing a lot of good work, meeting a lot of good needs of students, a lot of important needs of students, and running a lot of programs. And you can imagine that if you had to cut all of those people, the impact that it would have. And that's out of our 1,500 total employees that we currently have. 260 of them are funded by the levy. It also supports, as I mentioned earlier, we believe in social emotional needs, supporting the social emotional needs of kids, and the levy helps us do that. The levy supports social emotional learning. It provides funds for our buildings so that we can do PBIS. It provides coaches. It provides supports for our social emotional support rooms that we have in place. It provides curriculum so that students can learn about how to stop harassment, how to stop bullying, how to stop intimidation, all of those kinds of things, how to report when there are problems, dealing with their emotions and how to handle them successfully. So that is critical for us. It supports our advanced placement classes and our electives. That's very critical. Textbooks and curriculum. The sad thing about the current situation that we are under, because we're into this year and we're having to operate with the idea that there is that chance, there is that possibility that we will not pass a levy. So because of that, we've had to put a lot of things on hold. And one of the things that we've had to put on hold is our textbook and curriculum adoption. We have significant needs in our school districts. We've done a great job over the last few years adopting new curriculum. We've adopted new curriculum in the high school ELA, or English Language Arts program. We adopted new curriculum in our math programs at the high school. We adopted new social studies curriculum in our high schools. We adopted a new health curriculum in our high school. We adopted an extensive K-8 math program in our high schools, which was critical. But in our primary K-8, in our primary and our middle schools, we still need to do some more of that. We desperately need an ELA curriculum, an English Language Arts curriculum in our primary schools and in our middle schools, something that would align with the new standards. The ones we adopted were way before that. So that is critical. But those are expensive, just to give you an idea. The math curriculum that we adopted was almost $2 million, $1.8 million. And so we had $2.5 million that we had saved, ready to do for textbook adoptions, ready to move forward with that big ELA adoption, ready to adopt a curriculum for our middle school social studies, which still is using a curriculum where Bill Clinton is the president of the United States. So that kind of gives you an idea. But we had to take that money and we had to use that money to fund the potential levy loss that was possible for this year. Because if we don't pass a levy in November, then we will be, the second half of the year, we won't have any levy funds coming in. And that's why we had to be especially careful and especially conservative in terms of moving forward in those directions. Technology, security, and communications. We know the importance. We've seen it. We've seen the benefits of technology when we had to do remote learning. It was fortunate for us that we were prepared and that we were able to provide every single student in the district, K through 12, with a Chromebook so that they were able to access learning during that time when we were remote. The levy supports that. If we don't have that coming in, then there's a chance that we will not be able to update our technology and we will not be able to move forward in ways we would like to. Art and music, after school activities, sports, those are some other things. And I've talked a little bit about that, but those are what the levy pays for. We don't receive funds from the state for coaches for our sports. We don't receive funds for athletics. Those are paid for by the levy. Art and music at the high school are required classes, but at the primary level and at the middle school, they're not. And so when you're forced to look at the potential of almost $30 million worth of cuts, those are the kinds of things that you have to be looking at. And those are the kinds of things I will tell you honestly that scare me and worry me about the future of this district. Transportation. Battleground has one of the highest costs in terms of transportation for a district our size with the number of students. And that's because of the square miles that we cover. Battlegrounds covers 273, I believe it is, square miles of distance. Our buses are traveling, from, we like to say, from, Costco all the way up to Mount St. Helens. That's the length of our district. To give you an example, I believe that Vancouver Public Schools covers a 22 square mile distance. That's a huge difference. Now, so you can imagine that while Vancouver has a lot more kids and they have a lot more kids riding the buses, their buses are not traveling the distances that we are. So that is critical for us. And that's why our costs are high. That special education services, we do provide special education. As you know, it is a federal mandate. It's a state mandate. We have to do that. But you would think that that wouldn't be basic. You would think that that would be covered by all basic education, but it's not. Every state, every district in the state of Washington has struggles with meeting the cost of special education services. And we're no different than that. We have to use $3.5 million of our levy in order to pay for special ed services. And that's something that if we lost the levy, we couldn't just say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have a levy anymore, so we can't pay for that. We have to pay for that. If a student needs a nurse, a one-on-one nurse, we have to pay for it. If they need an interpreter, we have to pay for it. If they need a one-to-one aide, we have to pay for it. So those are kinds of things that the levy pays for. And of course, building maintenance and security updates. That's been huge for us. Hopefully, if you're out there and you have noticed some of the improvements that we've made in our schools, just over the last year and a half, 2 years, we've put in new carpeting, we've done new roofs, we've got new HVAC systems, we've renovated gyms at Pleasant Valley, looks beautiful, and Amboy looks fantastic. We've done play shed, covered play areas for Maple Grove and for Yackle. So a lot of stuff going on in the district, new parking lot improvements, just the district, I believe the district is looking better than it has in about 20 to 25 years. And that's because of the support of our community and the ability to use those levy funds to make sure that our buildings are kept in good shape. So here's a breakdown for you. About 14.2 million comes in educational support, and that's in terms of staff, transportation, crossing guards. Battleground's one of the few communities that uses crossing guards nowadays, and that's critical. And we obviously hire those people, pay for those people, and it's important that they're there to provide safety. Art and music classes I've already talked about, our elective classes, our health services, nursing is paid for by the levy. A lot of our nurses. I'm going to share a slide with you coming up here, and you'll see how much the state gives us for our nurses. And just so you know, we have either an LPN or an RN in every one of our buildings across the district. And the state, and again, I'll share, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but I'll tell you anyway, I'll tell you now, the state gives us enough money to cover about 1.8 nurses. Our drug prevention services, professional development, as I mentioned, and substitutes. You would think in today's day and age that, especially with COVID and everything that's going around, that the state would give us enough money to pay for subs. They give us a minimal amount of money, I think it's equivalent to about 4 days for the funded state employees that we have. So anytime we go over that, we have to use levy funds. And I will tell you that since I've been here in the district, there has not been a year that we have not had to access levy funds in order to pay for our subs. And the costs of that are significant. Building maintenance, important that we do asset preservation. Grounds is part of that. As I mentioned, custodial supplies, equipment, facility improvements, utilities, and insurance. Just reading some things for you now. 4.15 million in student learning activities, athletics and after-school activities, coaches, advisors, textbook, curriculum we talked about, our social emotional AP programs, highly capable program is funded by Levy. The $3.6 million in special education services, and again, $1.9 million in technology, security, and communications. It is significant, in a word. Here's when we talk about the state not providing us with enough funds to cover the costs that we have. Here's a good example. Just take a look at this, for instance. Look down here at psychologists. I want you to know that right now we currently have 17 psychologists in our district currently working. And the state gives us a single psychologist for 23,529 students. We don't even have that many students in our district. They give us a psychologist for middle school at 216,000 students. That's just the ridiculous. Look at this teaching assistant, because we all know that the role that teaching assistants play in our buildings and how important they are to meet the needs of kids. The state provides us with a teaching assistant for every 427 students we have in elementary. Most of our elementary schools are about that big, maybe just a little bit bigger. That means that each of our elementary schools, if we just went by what the state gave us, would have a single teaching assistant. Middle, 617, high school for every 920. Here's another good one that's here, is staff safety. They'll give us someone for staff safety for every 5,063 elementary students we have, for every 4,696 middle school students we have, for every 4,255 high school students we have. Well, again, you look at Battleground High School or you look at Prairie High School, and those schools would qualify for zero security if we went by just the prototypical school model. Here's an example that I was telling you about. This is a slide I was talking to you about. There's school nurses here. So this is how many nurses that we have in our schools, and this is what the state pays for, about 1.8. Here's psychologists down here. Again, as I said, a psychologist in every school, and we get approximately 0.2 or some ridiculous amount like that. So in order to provide these services, whether it's tech services, whether it's security, whether it's counselors, and the counseling number is a little smaller, the state's gotten better in recent years, or it's nurses or psychologists, even assistant principals. Our assistant principals are all paid for by the levy. So when the levy failed in 2005, I believe was our last levy failure, 2005, 2006, we got rid of all of our assistant principals in the district, or most of our assistant principals in the district. We had campuses, for instance, like Pleasant Valley campus, that was the middle school and the primary school were run by a single person. That would be impossible to do now. It was impossible to do then, trust me, but it would be impossible to do now with the new laws associated with the discipline laws, with the expectations that we have for meeting the social emotional needs for kids, with our TPEP, which is our teacher evaluation requirements that are there. It would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do that now. But these are some of the things that are covered by it. And as you can see, it is significant. And 260 positions. And if we lose the levy, that's what we're looking at. And here's the thing about what complicates this dramatically is that we know that we just can't say, for instance, well, if the levy doesn't pass, we're simply going to not have everything that the levy funds. Because as I mentioned previously, there are things in the levy that we have to have. We have to have nurses. I believe we have to have at least a significant number of our assistant principals. I believe we need all of them, but we would need many of them. We might be able to make minimal cuts there. We need our school psychologists. We need our counselors. If we want to have sports, we obviously need athletic coaches and activity advisors. We need to take care of our facilities. back in 2000, back in the days when I first moved into this district, my daughter and my son attended Amboy Middle School with pots in the middle, with dripping from the ceiling, with catching the rain that was coming in, because we didn't have the money to work on our facilities. Our mantra back then was warm, safe, and dry. That's the only thing that we were worried about. It's nice to know that we've moved past that. And that's where we need to stay as a school district and as a community in order to meet the needs of our kids. Here's what we're looking at. This is what we were up against. So I want to make sure that you understand this. Last year, we had some major revenue reduction challenges. The first one was that we lost 1,230 full-time students. That was a loss for us of $12.4 million. We had a reduction of a half year of the levy that we had to plan for. And that's going to cost us, again, $17.9 million. And again, the reason that I say that is because we get the levy equalization funds, so it goes up. So $17.9 million. So we had a total loss in this year's budget of $30.3 million. Here's what we did this year in order to offset that. Number one is we were able to reduce 6.6 million because of employees. So 41 teachers, and you can see the rest of the work there, 3 district office administrators, an assistant principal, a counselor, all of those people. That saved us $6.6 million. And I'll tell you, those cuts were significant to us and they were painful for us, but we did it. We also used 7.5 million in ESSER funds. The ESSER funds is the money that we received from the federal government for the COVID situation. What was frustrating about that for me was that the ESSER funds were made to be for supplements. We could do cool things with it. We could do a lot of new things with it. And we did with a lot of it. I want you to know we got almost $20 million and we were able to do some really important, really cool things. But what we had to do was we had to use 7.5 million of it to supplant the services that we would have lost because of the levy loss and the funding loss there. And so that's kind of frustrating. I do want you to know that moving forward, those funds are not going to be available for us. So we won't have this pool of money to pull for to make up the difference in future years. We also use fund balance reserve. We use fund balance reserve of $16.2 million. The great thing about this district over the since our last double levy failure in 2006, we were able to build a significant fund balance, which helps us be prepared in the case of emergencies, which helps us be innovative, which helps us to move forward in a lot of different programs for kids. We were able to build that up to $30.3 million. We used 16.2 of it to offset the loss. So you can see a $30.3 million loss. This is how we made it up down here, $30.3 million. Again, it's critical to point out that we won't have the ESSER funds to access next year. And with this 16.2 million, you might be thinking, well, Denny, if you had 30 million, you still have $14.2 million left. Great. So we can use that 14.2 million. And I'm telling you, we will use as much of it as we can. But I want you to know that all of what's left, the 14.2 that's left, is all not usable. And the reason I say that is because, just to give you an example, of that 14 million, 1.5 million of it is in the warehouse. What's in the warehouse? It's in consumables. It's in Post-it notes, it's in cleaning supplies, it's in desks, it's in things like that. So we can't access that. Another about $500,000 is in donations that were made to a specific cause. And so we have to honor those donations when they come in. We can only use them in certain places. Some of it, over $1 million, is ASB funds. And ASB funds are limited in how we can use them because those were generated by kids and they have to be used for kids. And we can't just use them to provide basic educational services. A lot of the funds that are in that 14 million that are left, about another million or so, $1.5 million, are in what we call categorical funds. So those are funds that are given to us, again, for specific purposes. For instance, they're there for CTE, our career and technical education classes. They're there for our LAP and our title programs. So we cannot use those to offset just general losses that we have. So I would actually say that out of the 14 million that's left, there's probably closer to around 10 million that we can access. However, out of that 10 million, we also have to make sure that we keep some funds on hand. We need about $3 million, at least three, probably more, but I'm going to be conservative and I'm going to say $3 million that we need in order to make sure that, because the state, when they give us our allocation, they don't give it to us all at once. They give it to us they give a little bit at the beginning of the year, they give some in the middle of the year, they give some at the end of the year. And so like a family bank account, you have to have your savings available, because when you get to the end of the month, you might not have enough money in that checking account and you have to borrow from your savings to tide you over until you get your next check. And that's the same way that a school district operates. So we could probably access about, as I said, $10 million, but keep $3 million in the bank, about $7 million. And we'll use it. We'll use all of what our fund balance is there. But here's the other thing you have to remember. The fund balance is like a savings account. It doesn't replenish. So when we get down to zero, or when we get down to those really low numbers, we're starting all over again. And I will tell you that it's taken us since 2006 in order to recuperate and build that fund balance up. And that means you can't just jump back in. It took us a long time to save $2.5 million for curriculum adoptions. And that's, again, part of the scary part about a double levy failure. So what happens if the levy doesn't pass? Well, I've told this to groups that I've talked to before. I've told this to staff when I've been out to staff. That question is my 315 question. And when I say 315, that's the question that keeps me up at night. That's the question that when my eyes open at 3:15 in the morning every night, that's the question that comes to mind. What will we do? And so these are just some of the things. We don't have specifics yet, but this is what we would be looking at. We'd be looking at larger class sizes due to staff reductions. We'd be looking at increased time on buses for students with fewer routes. And that's one of the reasons we would have to have fewer routes. And those of you anybody who lives up in North County, even some of our pocketed areas like at Tukes Valley or something, you already understand that our bus routes are significant. They are long and they go on for a while. So the thought of having kids on a bus for over, an hour, 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes is difficult. We have elimination of, less art and music in our schools, limited technology and aging of textbooks, elimination of programs, fewer activities and sports with higher fees, reduced supply and building budgets, and deferred building maintenance. All of those things are critical, are likely if we don't pass a levy. And I don't say that because I'm threatening. I say that because I would be remiss if I didn't point out that those were the things that we would have to be experiencing. And I didn't say that. And then we don't pass a levy and people are like, well, why didn't you tell us? And so that's why I tell you that. And again, for those of you that have been around in this community, you've seen it before. So this is not a threat. This is not just us, presenting a worst case scenario. This is what has happened, whether it was back in the 80s where we had to sell off our buses and eliminate middle school sports because of a double levy failure, or as I said, just the recent ones where we had to let our buildings go into disrepair, where we fell behind in curriculum adoptions, where we had to lose a lot of great talent because we have to cut so many people, or because people are worried about coming to work for us for fear that we won't be able to keep their position. Those are all critical. Here's why I think this is a deal. We have the lowest K-12 taxes in the county. Just to give an example, here's Camas up here. Camas has levies worth $277, a bond worth $1.97. Their total tax rate is $474. Washougal, La Center, Woodland, Evergreen, Vancouver, Hawkinson, Ridgefield, Green Mountain, all of these school districts, 429, 415, 392, 390, 371, 327, 318, 292. Battleground School District, 288. That includes the current levy at $2.32, and it includes a bond the bond that built Daybreak and Tukes and Amboy and did some renovations throughout the district of 56 cents. I want to point out that that bond sunsets in 2024. So in 2 years, that bond is going away. That rate will be gone, and it'll simply be the levy rate. But remember that if we pass a new levy, that'll be at $1.99. But remember, if we have the new levy and it's $1.99 and we continue to see the growth and new businesses and new homes being built, that $1.99 will go down even. And so our rate is significantly lower than everybody else in the county. And that's a critical piece of information. We understand the concerns of fiscal transparency and accountability. We understand that people want to know, but Denny, are you spending your money the right way? And I want you to know that we are ready to answer any questions you have about our fiscal accountability. All of us, myself, anybody can come in at any time and see me, and I will gladly sit down with you, have a conversation, answer your questions. Our CFO, Michelle Scott, is also willing to do that, to go over that. Our Deputy Superintendent, Shelley Witten, all of us are very able. We are living in the shadow. I know, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to say it publicly. I know that people are upset about what happened 7 years ago with Shawnee Bria, and I was an assistant principal at Battleground High School. I had nothing to do with that. We don't have any board members who were still on there. And I know there's frustration over that. But the reality is that we have been, since that time, we have been trying to be as fiscally transparent and accountable as we can be. And we invite anybody to watch our videos that we're putting out about that. And again, if anybody has questions about that, because I see it happen all over again, I see it happen again and again, that gets brought up. This is what we're trying to do. Our board of directors approves the annual budget and levy resolution. We have budget hearings that we have every single year. We have monthly reports and budget information online. We have an audit committee that reviews district expenditures monthly. We submit all of our stuff goes to the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, who approves our levy spending plan. The state auditor's office conducts yearly audits with us. We've had seven years of clean audits in this district. And there are state laws that regulate levies and how we spend that money. And I have also, in my commitment to transparency and my commitment to involving the community, have started a citizens advisory committee that we have 40 of our residents on there, and talking about budget, talking about expenditures, and talking about how we spend our money and where our priorities is part of what we will do. So again, I just want to welcome you. I want to welcome you to come to us if you have questions, and we will gladly answer anything that we can. Right now, what I'd like to do is I'm just going to share with you a short video. Kind of gives you a different perspective because you've been listening to me for so long. You can have a different perspective and listen to Shelley and Michelle talk about this. And then when we come back from that, we're going to open up our questions and we'll start answering questions. So here you go.
On November 2nd, the Battleground Public Schools community will be asked to consider a local levy to replace the one that will expire at the end of this year. Levy dollars remain a key part of providing critical programs and supports for students throughout Battleground School District.
So our local levy supports 260 additional staffing positions and programs that the state just doesn't fully fund or doesn't fund at all. Those programs are just critical for student success, pathways to careers in the future, as well as enrichment programs such as academic and athletic extracurricular opportunities.
State funding that comes to us comes from the primary numbers of students we have, and then how we allocate those is determined based on need. We've always felt like the arts are important to our community. They're important to our kids to be well-rounded. And so those certainly are things that would be impacted. There are lots of kids that are hooked into our schools for music programs or art programs or athletic programs. All of those things are enrichment activities that could impact our success with some of those kids that Academics is not their primary reason for being there.
Even after Washington State changed how it funds K-12 basic education, school districts still need local levies to provide programs that make the difference for student success.
The funding formula that the state uses is very antiquated, and it doesn't meet the reality of what we need to staff our buildings and to be able to provide the support staff necessary for students. And that is why we rely on local levies to help support those programs and those students. It's just critical.
We can't operate on a bare bones hope that we can provide enough for our kids. We have to start thinking about how do we meet the needs of the whole child. And kids come from all types of backgrounds and have all types of needs. All of our kids' needs are important. And so when we start to lose programs that meet the needs of those diverse learners or those that have diverse needs, we're impacting our whole community.
Battleground Public Schools already has the lowest tax rate of any district in Clark County, and the replacement levy would actually reduce it even further. The owner of a home with an assessed value of $450,000 would see their school tax bill drop by more than $120 next year under the new levy, and that same homeowner would pay less during each of the 4 years when compared to 2021.
With 76% of our budget tied to staffing, the direct result would be a reduction in staffing and programs and deferred maintenance for our facilities, which is something that we just don't want to have to, eventually you have to make that up at some point.
I know for myself, I've been a community member my whole life, and in the early 80s, two major things happened during a double levy failure, and that's that we lost middle school sports and we lost all of our transportation. We ended up having to have all of our bus system shift over to contracts. We had to sell off our buses to just keep the budget afloat. And those types of things, when you lose them, they just don't come back.
If the levy fails to pass on November 2nd, the district would get $0 in local funding. This annual loss of $28 million would require the district to make significant cuts to services and eliminate student programs. Battleground Public Schools works hard to make sure the community's investment in its students is used wisely. While other districts have multiple levies, Battleground has just one that provides a wide variety of programs and opportunities. From traditional schools and a rigorous academy to an at-home learning program, Battleground has an option to fit the needs of every student. Levy dollars are the difference that connects every student to a positive future. In Battleground, we are better together. For more information about the replacement levy, visit battlegroundps.org/levy, and please remember to vote on November 2nd.
Anybody who's interested in levy information, battlegroundps.org/levy on our webpage. We post a lot of information there. And then anybody interested in budget information, battlegroundps.org/budget. We can give you information there. And if you have any questions or want to reach any of us, communications@battlegroundps.org. So with that, what I would like to do at this point is to open up the chat for questions, Q&A, for questions and answers. So here we go. So let's do that.
We don't have any yet, so they can go to you can hover at the bottom and go to Q&A. And
If you hover at the bottom, you can go to the Q&A and click, and then it will come up and you can type in your question. We don't have any questions yet, so we'll wait a little bit. If we don't get any questions, we'll end a little bit early, but we'll give it a few more minutes. Again, I just want to thank everybody, whether you're, as I said at the beginning, whether you're leaning to voting no or you're leaning to voting yes. We just appreciate, your willingness to listen to this presentation, to understand the reasons why the school board and the school district decided to run the levy, and just appreciate you being here with us tonight.
so we have a question. Do we automatically get a ballot in the mail, or how do we vote?
So yes, the ballots will be mailed out On October 15th, the ballots will be mailed out. So if you're a registered voter, you will receive a ballot in the mail on October 15th. I do believe that the deadline may have passed. If you're, it's still available. So if you're not, I'm sorry, I'm looking at at Rita, she's helping me here. If you're not a registered voter, you can still register. I believe that you can register until October 25th online. And then up to that point, obviously, I don't know how you get your ballot at that point, whether or not they pick it up for you or they mail it to you, but you can still register up until October 25th. But the ballots, once again, are mailed out October 15th. So within a day or two of that, you should be receiving it.
We have a question about financials. How much of the levy goes to instructional technology like Chromebooks?
So instructional technology, I think if we were to go back to that slide, I believe it was about $1.6 million. So if we go back, keep going, one more, no, two more, right there. So you can see down here. So it's 1.9 million goes to technology, security, and community. So you're right. So Scott is around here somewhere. I could find him, but I thought that it was a considerable amount, like a 1.1. How much of the levy goes? 1 million. I've got my helpers. 1.6 million goes directly to the technology budget in terms of buying Chromebooks or actually buying Chromebooks. I would say that it's almost the entirety of that $1.6 million. So thank you for being patient as we go through this and try to find your answers.
Next question. How can I help share information about the levy?
Well, again, I think that certainly directing people to the to our levy webpage on the district webpage. One of the things that we're going to have is we're also going to have this presentation posted so that people can access it. They're certainly welcome to review the video. Another thing is that you can have people call us and have conversations with us. We're always looking for that. We were actually, when the levy was run the first time, we had about a 48.2% passing rate. We needed to get to 50%. We were about 1,000 votes short. So that gives you an example of how close it really was the first time out.
The next question is, why do we need so many extra support staff, such as psychologists? And how does that compare to other districts?
So I would tell you that psychologists, that's a very fair question. Psychologists are critical in the special education area. They do all of the work in terms of deciding whether or not students are qualified for special ed. Their workload is significant. So we have to have a psychologist at every building. We actually don't have a psychologist at every building. Our psychologists actually jump back and forth between buildings. But we're close to being at every building. Some of our smaller buildings have a part-time psychologist. I would say that compares very favorably with what other districts are doing. So our costs are not out of whack in terms of how it impacts special ed and how it impacts the support services. A lot of our other supports are equivalent to, again, what other districts are providing. Our counselors, for instance, our high school counselors operate at a ratio of one counselor for every 270. What is our counselor ratio? One counselor for every three. 370. Yeah, one counselor for every 370 students at the high school. At the middle school and the primary school, we just have a single counselor at those schools. Doesn't matter what the size of the school is. So we have a school that's smaller on the smaller side, maybe 450 students, they get one counselor. We get a school that's a little bit larger, like say Yakult, where they have over 700 students, they get one counselor. And so I think you'll see that in other districts, we are actually more conservative with our staffing than some other districts are. We do have a lot of staff, as I said, our associate principals. all of our local school districts around here have buildings that are staffed very similar to what ours are. So I don't think that we're overstaffed when it comes to our staff. I think that the model that the state is using to pay for staff is antiquated, and they haven't kept up with the needs of schools in 2021.
We have a comment. Thank you. This was very informative, and I appreciate the format we offered. And we don't have any other questions at the moment.
Okay, well, we'll wait about another 30 seconds. If we don't get any more questions, we'll end it. So again, really grateful for those of you that gone on, took the time to hear us out. And again, much appreciative, and our commitment is we're better working together. So you're helping us with that. So again, thank you very much. And I think that's it for us. So with that, I will say have a pleasant evening and thank you very much. Take care.